Welcome to this a little bit special Ricky's reviews, and this is a retro review, and we're going to look at the promised game Final Fantasy IX, just like I was announcing a while ago. And what's going to be a little bit special with this review is that we're going to look at the game from a little bit of a different perspective. The video material will be in practice pretty much unedited. It will show you where I am from part to part, and of course I can't play through every single part and show you everything I do. So it'll be chosen step by step from start to finish. And this is a playthrough that will spawn for a long time, since it's also a really long game. And if I feel that I can come to a conclusion after a while, of course, we're going to end the series, or if the gaming completely stops. But it will spawn over a long period of time, that's for sure. So, Final Fantasy IX, why am I playing this particular game? Especially since I also could review other games in the series, and games that I haven't played in the series, and games that I have played that I actually like a little bit better. Well, basically there are a couple of factors that is interesting with this particular game. It is the last Final Fantasy in the main series that came for the PlayStation, which also gave them a bit of a different opportunity when they developed this game. It also does something that some of the other games in the series did not try to do, which also might be referred to as the beginning of the end, or the start of something new, if you so would want to. But the basic concept for me when it comes to this game and wanting to review it is that I have tried to play it so many times, and I am a big fan of the series, even though it's been a complete disappointment these last couple of years. Whereas you would think that the more modern technology and the more things that the developers can invest into a project, it would get better, but that has not been the case when it comes to the Final Fantasy series. But the Final Fantasy IX game is interesting because I've played it a couple of times, but never really came that far, and I played different parts and also been playing it on different types of setups. The original PlayStation I played it on for a bit, but I could not keep it since I never really had a original PlayStation myself. And of course I played it on the emulators, and I've been playing it now on my PlayStation 3 and such. I must say that the experiences differentiate a lot, but I can only talk about it clearly when I play it completely, and when I focus and actually try to analyze the game, because this is one of those games that I'd say either you would love it or you would actually hate it, and that is, of course, it doesn't really say much. But if you look at it from an historical perspective, which I will do in this first part of this review, since I have a lot of time to introduce this series now. The Final Fantasy VII game was the first real big time Final Fantasy game, so naturally Final Fantasy VII set really super high standards. But what struck out with the Final Fantasy VII game is the fact that the game itself had a complete storyline. It featured cinematic movies, and it featured something like a narrative that we haven't seen in games before, that really took things to another level. So I think that most people, if they hadn't played a PlayStation before and was really Nintendo kids, the Final Fantasy VII game was one of those games that actually introduced something new and fresh to gaming, and just presented you with a completely different perspective on what a game could actually become. And so when I also had the chance to play Final Fantasy VII, and then comparing the evolution of Final Fantasy VII all the way to the 9, there is a complete difference in how they managed to make the game, if you would see it that way. The basic concept is this: Final Fantasy VII was produced in a matter of way as a game, whereas Final Fantasy IX, you can clearly see that a lot of the people that were involved in the production wanted to make something more than just a regular game. And some of the functions from the start of the game that just tells you that they had really high ambitions was that the game does not feature that many fights as a regular Final Fantasy would do. the fighting system is going back to basics to get focused more on some other aspects of the game. In this case, storytelling. They have a lot of mini games and also um, a way of presenting the story and the narrative in a completely new way, which which started a little bit in Final Fantasy VIII, but they took it to a whole new level with the 9 version. And also, like, if you look at what the story is about, how many characters you can play, that you can switch, that you switch between playing a different character, that you sometimes play the bad guy, that you sometimes can get these scenes like in a movie that you can choose to not watch if you don't want them, or if you watch all of it, you can see it as a complete movie, of course. Um, you can also connect a lot of these cinematic CGI movies, which in itself almost becomes like a movie if you if you cut them together. And a lot of people have been doing a lot of projects with these after the game was released. So in conclusion, you'd say that the production values, the way the ambition was, and the way the storytelling is presented, and just the way that you play the game, and that there are less gameplay, especially in the startup of the game. It takes a lot longer to get into the actual playing, which has spawned a little bit of a new take on gaming after this release. And in conclusion, then, Final Fantasy IX was developed more like a complete production, maybe even more so like a movie than an actual game. And that is the most interesting part with this game, if you ask me. And which also strikes me as a little bit odd, because if I look at it, like if I look at the game and then think about what happened after, you could say that, as I pointed out a bit earlier, this might actually be an ambitious start to something that actually wasn't that good. Because if you look at the 10 and 12 and also 13, people get more and more disappointed at what you get in the games, and the games have this kind of structure that resembles a lot more Final Fantasy IX than it actually resembles the core games of the series, like Final Fantasy VI, 3 in America, or Final Fantasy VII. And so I would say that they had a lot of cool ideas, and the way that the story is presented, the way that the dialogues are written, the way you can see these scenes, the way the CGI cutscenes are in this game, they're all beautiful and well done. But it also synced the game down in terms of gameplay, and I don't think they thought it through completely when they did Final Fantasy IX, and they have still not really figured out what they want to do with the Final Fantasy series, and so they just make these bombastic productions, which kind of started with Final Fantasy IX. And I must say that this game, it has limitations because of the console itself. The loading times are pretty severe, and a lot of the scenes, especially when they're using the gameplay in-game engine instead of like cutscenes and things like that, are not that good. And so if you want to create a Shakespeare drama or something like that with loading times and really like bad acting, if you say so, because they can't simulate what they wanted to do and the high aspirations that they had with this game, then of course the limitations of the system is what stopped them, because the ideas were there. And that's the most interesting part of the game so far. Um, the game starts off as you playing the character Zidane, and he is this rogue kind of guy that runs around together with his circus and trying to kidnap the princess. And so this isn't really much of an original story, but what happens when he reaches this town is you also get to play as this black mage called Vivi, and you also get to play as the royal guard at the castle called Steiner, and they all try to locate this princess. And what happens is that you everything resolves around the theater's main act at the stage. So, so to sum it all up, the story is a big mess of things that all go together in one and then split out into different um, well, areas later on, whereas you play as all these characters and they all have their different agendas, which is really interesting, and they're also unique in the ways they can be played inside the actual gameplay when the fighting starts and stuff like that. So if you look at it um, from like the start to where I am at the moment in the game, I must say that it is actually pretty entertaining, but it is really, really slow, and I don't really think that the gameplay itself is that fun, and that is a big problem for me. Whereas there is also an emphasis on making things simple, but as simple as it may be, there are parts where you actually then are required to do things in a certain way, and if you don't figure it out immediately, you will also have to backtrack and sometimes wait or grind your way to a battle, or you might actually end up dying when you figured out how to do something and then have to go back and do it again. And since this load times are severe, the game is a bit slower, and the story is presented in this particular way, I must say that overall this hurts the gameplay, and it really hurts to have to do this tedious work just to get to all the good parts of the game. And I also must say that there are some other things in the game that I will take up more in the later parts that they actually did a lot with, but and they expanded that kind of concept from some of the things like the inventory system, how you can progress your characters, the card minigame, the towns, and all of these things. They don't really come together as one. They go in different directions, just as the story does, which is a bit of a problem, but at the same time they're really enjoyable. And I must say that the Tetramaster game could it might as well be a game of its own, but it takes a lot of time, and inside a game like this, I don't really know without having I of course have to play it a lot more, but that's also a point. Like, I'm a reviewer, I've been playing 15 to 20 hours and I still can't really talk too much about it. I just know that it's a really big part of the game, which in itself might not actually mean much for the actual Final Fantasy IX. So I could as well just make another part called Tetramaster, and just saying that gives you an idea of what type of game this actually is. And of course, if you look at it in the later games and compare it also again to the history of the games before it, you had less minigames and shorter minigames, but you also had these running themes of like having a card game, and also things that make the game world feel more alive by including things that can consume your time a lot. And it might or might not be something for you in that aspect. Well, anyways, that's the first part of the Final Fantasy IX series. I hope you enjoyed some of my thoughts this far, and as I said, I won't give you a grade. We'll see a little bit later what I say when I come a bit. It is an enjoyable game, but it has a lot of downsides, and you can clearly see what the creators were aiming for with the game. But of course, you don't really know what the outcome of it is, and I am not that drawn into the story as I thought that I would be at this point, and that might also have been a reason why I almost never wanted to finish the game. Like, I've tried it so many times on different platforms, but never really gotten that urge to just, I'm going to finish this game this time. So we'll see. And if I come that far this time, it'll be interesting at least. And a lot of people put this as one of the better Final Fantasy games, which in itself is something that I really highly doubt at this point. But that said, it might be one of the better ones in the modern era. So until next time, Undertaker out.